the policy out there for you guys to read. Many different ways you can get that. But if you have a comment on that policy, you can come up and speak to it now. There is going to be comment later on after we're finished with our business. I'd like to get all the policy comments taken care of now. If you come up and speak to that, because this is a matter of public record, I need you to write your name and your phone number. We didn't have a separate sign-up sheet for this. So, so there's a paper on the table over there. And who would like to go first? Oh, yeah, we have letters of public comment. We will go through those and talk to those at a later time.
Sherry? If you speak at this time,
you can speak later. Yes.
Okay. And how many minutes?
I guess our standard 3.
Okay.
Susan?
I'm ready.
All right. Was there another question over here?
It was answered.
Okay. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you. Do I need a microphone?
Yes.
Here.
Lois, could you hand this out? Are you busy?
Press the button.
Oh, I need the 12 one.
Just only press the button.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members.
Turn that on.
You have to press the button right on the thing where it's orange. It's a
Sign
thing
in.
like a turn on a computer button. But
Do what? Press what? It's orange.
one on the left.
The left.
And did the light change color?
It's new.
Well,
Green.
There we go. Okay. Madam Chair and board members, I'm here to comment on the new policy. And I believe it's on page 11. I know some of the numbers were different. It's under the section for selection guidelines, policy for protecting children from harmful, sexual explicit material in areas designed for minors. And on down a couple times in this section, it says that collections that would be harmful to minors or impede their development. And another place it says harmful to minors. And what I've passed out there is a paper study from the prestigious Judith Reiman Institute, who studied the effects of porn on the brain for 40 years. That's 4 decades. And if you just, it's long, I'm going to ask you to read it later. It's full of technical information. But if you go to the 3rd page, they say that yes, porn is highly addictive, even more addictive than meth and cocaine. A man, if you look at the yellow highlighted on the 3rd page, he was placed on naltrexone, which is a drug given for opium addiction, and he was able to obtain control of his sexual life on this drug. And it goes on and on. If you go to the next page, they describe in the yellow, there's a book on the brain that changes itself. It talks about how pornography rewires the brain. And you can read that. It's just interesting to me. And the bottom gray section is human sexual climax utilizes the same reward pathways as those mobilized during a heroin rush. And they go on to say we have to understand the implications for this so that we can help people who have the disease of pornography addiction. And so please read that and be aware that in the children's sections there are books, and I hate to talk about these things, that teach children 4 to 10 years old how to masturbate, exactly in great detail how to do it, and then show a child in a bathtub doing it. That book is called Sex is a Funny Word. The last time I checked it out, about 2 months ago, it was still on the bottom shelf. It was not in the parenting section. And so something like that can cause a child to develop an addiction. And as these professionals are saying, it's a very difficult addiction to overcome, but it requires a lot more treatment than regular drug abuse. So thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you, Susan. Next.
I'll go. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. section on appeals of books?
It's not on
It's green.
There you go.
I'm just
Oh, now
not
it
close
is.
Gotta be
enough.
close.
Okay.
Just not close enough.
Okay.
In the section on appeals, there's nothing that indicates that the library board will be reading the books that they're going to be ruling on. I think that should be included. I think it's important that the library board reads those books and that it should be stated in policy. Thank you.
Did you sign it? Yes, I did. Sorry this takes so long. Okay, I had a couple other things to go
You want to
over.
go ahead and
but
state your name, sorry.
Christy Garrett.
There you go, just for the cameras.
On page 11, it states that you do not want any depiction of nudity, etc. So books like Once Upon a Potty would be banned. I know that Maurice Sendak's In the Night Kitchen was banned because it showed a drawing of a penis. There could be no children's books about Greece or Paris, as there are nudes everywhere out in the open, carved in stone, on the sides of buildings, and one might be seen in a picture of a building. I agree that we don't want to expose kids to sexual battery or bestiality, but I think we can rely on publishers not to print such books for children or young adults. They would quickly lose their customers. On page 16, it states, nor will items be sequestered except for or to bring the library into compliance with the collection development policy on protecting children from harmful sexually explicit material. This is censorship, pure and simple. Whose definition of sexually explicit materials do you intend to use? There is a wide range of sexual mores in this community, and you do not represent us, nor are you qualified to determine what materials are sexually explicit. Only the courts can do that. On page 11, under section 1, it is written that no materials added to the children's and young adults section shall include any picture, photograph, drawing of a person or portion of a human body which depicts nudity or sexual conduct, etc. Is it really your intention to ban mouse because of one tiny drawing? It's about this big at the top of a page. I totally missed it when I read the book. And it's just a drawing of a woman's breast. I totally missed it. Or to ban Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation, because one page shows her walking in a park with classical Greek and Roman statues of nude females. Is it not more valuable to expose children to the Holocaust, even if it means exposing children to such drawings? Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Next.
Will we have a chance to respond to any of these? There's more language that actually answers the questions you just raised.
I think you go ahead. You want to talk about it now?
Here's a,
Just go ahead. Come on.
Yeah, if you go down
here's
in the paragraph you read, we added language that modifies nudity, sexual conduct, and all that to say which is obscene. So it would protect against concerns over Michelangelo's David.
Did you sign the sheet? And state your name, please.
Which button is it? Sorry.
In the future, don't turn it off. Just leave it on and set it down.
Okay. My name is Caleb Elkins.
Thank you.
Libraries are the most democratic institution in America. For decades, Campbell County Public Library has contributed to the education, entertainment, cultural enrichment, and general edification of citizens, regardless of wealth, status, race, orientation, or faith, and it has done this free of charge. For all those patrons, there were materials and services that not only helped citizens better themselves, but brought them together in unexpected ways. Whether it was providing a place for people to share their passion for board games, hosting story time for kids, helping people with their taxes, or offering free legal advice, CCPL has been there for its patrons. Behind every worthwhile library, there is an implied message to its card holders: you belong. With the proposed changes to the book acquisition policy, that message seems like it could change to some of you belong. Despite the protestations to the contrary, these changes, influenced by East Coast hate groups, Mass Resistance, and the Liberty Council, target the LGBTQ community and make it clear that they and material written by people like them are not welcome at the library. To me, this is unconscionable. The library is supposed to be for everyone. There should be books in the stacks that could offend any single patron, because the library's job is to curate quality materials that represent a broad range of perspectives. The book that challenges one individual's worldview is the same text that makes another individual feel less alone in the universe. Both of those hypothetical patrons' tax dollars are the same color, so both of their interests should be represented. I'd like to talk a little about George Orwell. Both Animal Farm and 1984 are inarguable classics and have been among the most banned books in the US and internationally. Interestingly, 1984 was initially banned in America for being too communist and was banned in the Soviet Union for being pro-democracy. Today it seems that some individuals are determined to imitate Orwell's thought police, and I'd like to offer a word of caution. If you choose to disregard the end of Animal Farm and codify that some patrons are more equal than others, history will remember, and posterity doesn't look kindly on those who trample on the First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce? State your name.
Bruce Williams.
Thank you.
Fundamentally, I don't believe this board is capable of believing in freedom. And as such, I have a list here that's too long to go through during this time. So this is my evaluation of your policy.
Next.
Just come up, Deb, just come up.
My name is Gail Cruz, and I wrote comments to the library board. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time and effort to improve our library policy guidelines. In a world where children can unfortunately be used as pawns, sometimes for political and social experimentations, and where parental rights and responsibilities are usurped by institutional staffs, it is now more than ever necessary to safeguard our children and make sure safeguards are in place for accountability. I especially appreciate your changes to Section 3 of the library policy with regard to obscene and pornographic materials of any kind, honoring parental rights to control information to which their children are exposed. Parents have the legal right to train up their children in every way, socially, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, and physically. While parents might allow other entities such as schools, libraries, or athletic clubs access to their children, this is limited access, trusted access. Institutions such as schools and libraries are not given carte blanche privileges to rewire the moral and spiritual character of the children they serve.
When dealing with other people's children, respect for parental rights and obligations are crucial. Thank you, members of the board, for taking on these responsibilities. And I know it's a burden at times, but thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Deb Proctor. I do not support the proposed collection development amendments. First and foremost, I do not believe the current policy needs to be changed. The Campbell County Library staff worked diligently when creating the initial collection development plan to address the demographics of our community and library standards to ensure that our public library provides materials for all our county citizens. As I've been reminded by Dave and others, the most important part of collection acquisitions is not to provide for the majority. CCPL does that in exceptionally fine fashion. But the most important thing is to recognize the need for information, materials, reading opportunities for the 1% and 5% minorities that are citizens of Campbell County, no matter age, religion, race, and long list. Young adults, teenagers, emerging adults, or whatever label one gives them, deserve and need knowledge from published, edited, expert-reviewed sources like a library book, rather than from a groomer or an abuser on an internet page, or whispered information from another teen. Whose definition of the subjective terms used in your proposed changes, like sexual content, sexually appropriate, educationally unsuitable, do you use? I'm sure there's a wide range of thoughts about these terms. I believe that the changes the current library board has proposed will prevent young adults from attaining appropriate information for their ages. The other opposition I have to the proposed collection development is that the changes are anything but community-based. You accepted ideas for change from a Florida attorney group. You reviewed the ideas in a special board meetings. You did not allow public comment. How in the world does this meet your previous commitment and today's commitment to community standards? I believe you abdicated your responsibility to field discussions from the community of Gillette, Wright, and Campbell County and regarding the change of the collection development policy that has allowed CCPL to build a collection of materials developed for the needs of all of our citizens, not just a certain segment. What you are proposing are Florida standards, not Campbell County, Wyoming standards. I hope the library board members recognize this hypocrisy and vote against the proposed collection development changes on June 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is David Buckmeyer. On the community standards, I don't understand how you can come up with a community standard. There are court standards. I hear people saying all the pornography and obscene things in the library. There is no pornography in the library. There is nothing in the library that has been deemed obscene by the court. And to push this agenda, you're just flaunting the First Amendment, and I don't know, I'm just at a loss for words how this could ever come this far, because you want to care about the community. You're not. You're flaunting the Constitution. You're ignoring First Amendment rights. You're making judgments on material that this library board and the people in this room cannot make. It has to be made in the court system. It has to be deemed obscene by the court. This is not. This is stuff that you guys don't like, and that is all it is. And you want to protect the people that want no protection from you from seeing this. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Hugh Bennett, and a lot of people are picking on those from Florida. Well, my wife's from Florida, and I think she's been a very positive contribution to the community of Campbell County. And most of the parents who've had first graders in her classrooms over the last 30 years would agree with that. So, Florida lawyers are good too. Additionally, I'm a veteran, and I'd like to bring the board's attention to the #1 health crisis facing our veterans. It's PTSD-induced suicide. The problem, as I understand it, with veterans killing themselves is it's very difficult. They cannot unremember the violent deaths and injuries of friends and enemies. This is something you can't get out of your head. This is what brings them awake in the middle of the night. This is what puts them on drugs. Eventually it becomes too much for some of them, and about 1 a day kills himself in America right now. If they could get rid of it, they might not kill themselves as often. This same ability to not forget something is what leads to a lot of transgender and alternate sexual lifestyle suicides, mental health issues, and problems. The traumatic experience involved in some of these behaviors, to say nothing of all the sexual diseases that are inherent in some of them, add a great deal of stress to the life of the individual involved. Now, I've heard a great deal of chest beating about concerns for the constitutional First Amendment. I'm a publisher, and I can tell you there aren't very many restrictions on publishing. You can put any crazy thing you're willing to print and pay for on paper and spread it all over the place. They're all laws and they're all courts about obscenity, and the library and the school district are protected by exclusions in Wyoming's code. That's why we won't see a test case on obscenity in the libraries, and that's why we're depending on local boards such as yourselves to do the right thing, for which I commend you. Thank you for your time. I believe if the right to recruit, groom, and pervert minors with inappropriate sexually perverse materials in public buildings with taxpayer funds should be a constitutional right, then they should champion that at the federal level. I don't think it'll ever be in our Constitution. I hope and pray it's not, and I don't think it should happen. Thank you for your public service.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenny Sorensen. I'm a cisgender, heterosexual, agnostic rhino. I used to be, growing up, a reader who was painfully shy, Mormon, and a tomboy. And in the future, who knows? I might become a lesbian Marxist. Now, identity is shaped by a myriad of factors, and no one thing can change it. That's why it's wrong for a community, or the library board more specifically, to say that it is unsafe to include diverse materials in the children's and teen sections of a public library. It is wrong, and it just doesn't make sense. For example, when I was a teen, I read the book It by Stephen King. But even though I read that book, I didn't come to the conclusion that murder and torture was a good thing. In fact, I thought the opposite. I read the book Flowers in the Attic, and I didn't leave reading that book thinking that incest was a good thing. I read Fahrenheit 451, and it did not make me believe in book banning. I read the alien abduction book Communion, and I actually came away from that book thinking that alien abductions were real, but I've since changed my mind. Recently, I read a book, a biography of Kurt Cobain. I was obsessed with it. I still am. But I don't think that using heroin is a good idea. It's okay to read books about tough topics. In fact, it's those types of conflicts that create both bestsellers and classics. Books don't groom children. They won't give a teenager an STD. They can, however, build empathy in teens and children for people who are different than them. They can let young readers know that they are not alone, and they should not be invisible. Books can act as cautionary tales, as a safe space for young readers to learn from the mistakes of characters without making those same mistakes themselves. Here in this room, we have a multitude of identities. People who are young and old, Christian and atheist, working class and retirees, husbands, wives, parents and singletons, liberals and members of mass resistance. And many of these identities have changed from our younger years. Identity should never be equated with obscenity. That is why this board should not adopt a collection development policy that makes teen and children's identities shameful, that is driven by bias and prejudice. It is wrong and illegal to do so, and a collection development policy like the one proposed today has no place in our community or public library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jared Green. I'm not too familiar with all the content that's available at all libraries across the country, but I would suspect that I would not be able to obtain any Playboys or Hustlers or whatever the names of these other types of magazines of that nature. The difference between that material, I'm guessing, is because it's very graphical. There's a photograph. Now, the only difference between that and some of the content that I've read that's in some of these books is that it is a hand drawing and then a whole lot of verbiage graphically describing, even though there's no photograph. And so similarly, like with this rating system that you are proposing, I don't hear anybody complaining that the Motion Picture Association of America has a rating system where if you go to the theater, that there is a movie being shown that's rated R, that if you're 17 or younger, you cannot get in unless you're with a parent, and that it briefly describes in that rating system content that's in the film, such as violence or profanity or nudity, and on and on. To my knowledge, there aren't any protests about that rating system. And then similarly, I guess I would not be able to check out any videos here that are of the XXX type. Not that I would want to, but in tax funding, taxpayer funded buying of that material, having it at the library, I don't think as a society we've ever done that. And I wouldn't support it if we did, and I'm glad we don't. But yet these books, in some opinions, my opinion, it falls into the same category as this XXX material that has never, to my knowledge, been in any public library anywhere in the country. I can't speak for other countries. Thank you.
Jared Green. Is there anybody else?
Hi, my name is Sherry Eaglin. Thank you for allowing us to speak on this. I just want to say that I believe the development policy was fine. It wasn't broken. It didn't need to be fixed. We do not have obscene material in here or pornographic. And I don't think you have your definition explained very well enough that you have your director, your executive director, needing to determine what you all think. I don't, exclude books to be ordered, or to take them off the shelves and put them where you're making sure they're going to go or whatever. So I don't think that is appropriate. I would highly recommend that you revisit that if you're expecting her to know your minds on what you're going to exclude or remove. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Lila Austin, and I thank you for letting me speak here this evening. I've been following what's been going on with the library probably ever since it started. I have the pleasure once a week of going into Campbell County Detention Center and visiting with teenagers. And I'm now asking every session I go in if they know about this library situation.
Keep the mic close to your mouth.
One 16-year-old female, when I asked, do you know what's going on with the library? She said, yes, I do. What do you think about it? She said, I think adults have more preoccupation with sex than we do. Do we ask the kids in this town what they think about this stuff? I said, asked her, explain yourself. She said, I'm sexually active. I know how it works. I don't need books. Don't these people have enough to do without spending their time on this crap? We don't need an education. It works. But she's sexually active. So maybe we should spend more time on academics and learning instead of worrying about what these children are thinking about their sexuality. They don't all have it figured out, but last Thursday when I was in juvenile detention, there were 5, 2 females, 3 males. Asked the 5 of them what they thought about it, and one of the males said, it's a bunch of nonsense. We don't need these books. We need parents that are responsible for raising us. He said, my parents are the reason I'm here. It's not because I necessarily get my hands on drugs or bad reading material or anything like that, but maybe we need some morality and some parents that are responsible in raising us. That's what I wanted to visit with you about. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I'm Ann Hardesty. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And our Declaration of Independence says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That Creator, God, gave each of us the ability to make choices for ourselves. That doesn't mean He gave us the right to make choices for others. This library has been functioning very well for many years. I can see no reason to change the policy that has led to its success.
Thank you.
As always, I'd like to thank the library and the board for allowing us to speak. Today, I am most concerned about the new proposed collection development policy, which I find to be discriminatory and a violation of the First Amendment. Having recently spoken with my school librarian about the process of curation of children's libraries, I have discovered that the guidelines surrounding the curation of a school library are stricter than those that govern a public library such as this one. Even so, we currently have books at the school library that would be banned under the adoption of this new collection development policy. I noticed that the new policy specifically bans books with LGBTQ content, citing it as sexually explicit, although my school library continues to house books of this content without negative effects to the student body. And I should mention that they are regularly checked out, and the students have never discussed any sort of disgust or unease with the book's content at all. I have 3 cases to cite, 3 court cases to cite from other situations similar to this one. In Arkansas, in Cedarville School District in 2003, they tried to ban Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone because it incited witchcraft and poor behavior of students. And the court ruled it is impermissible to restrict access to books on the basis of the ideas expressed therein. At a court case in Texas in the year 2000, they tried to ban this book called Heather Has Two Mommies and Daddy's Roommate. And they tried to ban that due to LGBTQ+ content. And the district court granted an injunction against the enforcement of the resolution on the grounds that it violated the constitutional right to receive information. And in the case versus the Unified School District, number 233, in 1995, they challenged Annie on My Mind. Students challenged the Kansas School Board's decision to remove this book, which depicts a romantic relationship between 2 teenage girls, from the school district's secondary school libraries. The court found that the school board's actual motivation for removing the book from the library was disapproval of the ideas contained therein, and thus the removal violated the First Amendment. As you can see from these examples, previous attempts to censor books have been deemed unconstitutional and against the law. A book will not jump off the shelf and force anyone to read it. If you don't want to read a book, don't. If you don't want your children reading a certain book, then that is your right as their legal guardian. But you cannot infringe upon the rights of others by banning these books from the public library or even the children's section. Leave the decisions of curation up to the librarians who are educated and trained for this work, and leave the decisions about which books the kids can read up to their parents. Thank you.
I need you to state your name and then say the thing, please.
My name is Hannah Van Hoff.